Welcome everyone to Public Health's Native American Heritage Month Education Series. I'm Renelle, Public Health Nurse, and I'm joined today with Jamie, CHR Supervisor. We gather here today to celebrate the past, present, and future of the Ho-Chunk Nation and all of our Indigenous relatives. Public health focuses on prevention, promotion, and the protection of the health and well-being of our communities. The mission of the Ho-Chunk Nation Department of Health is building a strong mind, body, and spirit together. A key step in this is to provide education. Today, we are happy to have Kimberly Lonetree, Indigenous lactation counselor and doula in training, with us here today to discuss breastfeeding in Indigenous communities. We'll let Kimberly introduce herself and go through her presentation, and at the end, we'll have room for questions and answers. Please use the chat function to enter any comments or question for our presenter. Jamie and I will monitor the chat throughout the presentation and read the questions for Kimberly at the end. You can also raise your hand and come off mute during the Q&A to ask your questions out loud. Any questions that we don't have time for today, we will bring back to Kimberly and then email back to the group. So Kim, I will turn it over to you.
All right, and hopefully everybody can hear me very well. I'm just gonna apologize in advance if you hear any crinkling in the background. That is my cat Cheddar. He is very curious and walking around right now. So I also have dogs, so I apologize if there's any barking during it. But yeah, so I'm a Ho-Chunk tribal member, 35 years old. Couple years ago, I ended up going to Indigenous breastfeeding counselor training. And that I had found out through the Ho-Chunk Nation Health Department. And so I signed up for it, was kind of like, I've got some time, I've got an opportunity to do this. And it's something that I know that eventually I'd like to be a mother myself. And so I was curious what kind of training that they would give and what I could learn in preparation for that, but also to help others. Because my ultimate goal all around is to help as many other natives, specifically Ho-Chunks, because this is my tribe, with different things that involve like your body and your mind, working together, and education. That's another part that I'm currently involved in now. So outside of this, as I just mentioned, I'm also a doula in training. That was a program that I ended up doing soon after the Indigenous lactation counselor training with the same group of women. It was amazing. I developed some very deep friendships with these women, and they're from all over Wisconsin. They're also Indigenous, and they're all from different tribes. So we're able to kind of communicate with each other here and there. We do meetings like twice a month. And then we have group chats where we keep in touch and we talk about different things we encounter or questions that we have. And then just, check to see if everybody's okay and how we're doing, and try to get together here and there. Additionally, I'm also an educator. So I've been teaching music for many, many years. Music is my my first career, and it's also I would have to say like my first love as far as like, what I loved to do in life. And I was always trying to figure out ways to bring it back to the Ho-Chunk Nation and teach children here. So that's also what I'm currently doing is I'm educating at a private school here in Reedsburg. And then I am starting a position with the Department of Education with the Ho-Chunk Nation as well. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Okay. So yes, I'm an Indigenous lactation counselor and doula in training. And please let me know if anything goes wrong with these PowerPoint slides, and we will work it out. But Indigenous lactation counselors, we're basically just going to go over what they do, where to find nearby counselors, and how to become a counselor yourself. So they educate Indigenous women on traditional practices and modern practices that are all like up to speed with health codes, and also just like best practices for breastfeeding. Breastfeeding has a lot of stigma attached to it. There are women that are not very comfortable with breastfeeding because they were kind of taught like maybe it's not the most effective way, or they've seen others struggle with it, or they're just uncomfortable with it because there's not a lot of privacy available to them to be able to breastfeed. Um, the awesome thing about breastfeeding is that it's always been a thing. It's always been a part of us women, right? And we're able to do that. And so, regardless of like what you may have been told or difficulties you might have seen others experience, there are methods to actually address those and to help you breastfeed your child in a way that's more comfortable for you and for the baby. But also, like, say you're having trouble making milk, there are ways to uh, get that production up so that you can breastfeed your baby a lot easier. So they assist a lot with those issues. Tongue ties, those are a big thing. I actually have like a very mild tongue tie, both on the bottom and the top. And so many of you might not actually know what that is, but if you can see me through the camera, I'll lift up my tongue and you'll be able to see it. It's that kind of like piece of skin that kind of like protrudes out from the tongue. And I have it in my lips too, but they're very, very mild. So those are things that a lactation counselor would be able to assist you with, but then you would also consult with your doctor to see if you would need to do anything with that. Um, Overall, breastfeeding support for all Indigenous communities. We have a lot of knowledge within our own tribe, but also these other Indigenous tribes have their own knowledge as well and shared knowledge. So if you know something or if you learn something within your tribe or from your doctor, you can share that easily with others, no matter where they're from. And a lot of what lactation counselors do, again, is to encourage women to breastfeed. So this list is really important, and I'll make sure that this PowerPoint is shared so that you can look at it and you can gather whatever information you'd like off of it. But there are several locations here that I've actually included where you can get more information about lactation counselors. The Great Lakes Intertribal Council, GLTC, Wisconsin Breastfeeding Coalition, the Ho-Chunk Nation Department of Health. So this one's really great because they have in office, they have virtual. Their WIC program is available in Wittenberg, Black River Falls, Baraboo, and Nakusa, and it provides nutritional education and breastfeeding support. So that is kind of like an immediate assistance. And then you can Google search. So Google has tons of information. And if there's anything that you have a question on, just Google it. And I'm positive you'll be able to find whatever information that you're looking for, if you're just trying to look for something right away, right off the bat. And then as you become more interested in particulars with the breastfeeding, you can reach out to, you know, your Department of Health, or you can reach out to anybody else. And that is a breastfeeding counselor, and you would be able to get more information that way and kind of have a one-on-one, which I think a lot of people like. And then if you wanted to become a lactation counselor yourself, there is the Center for Health Equity Education and Research. I have that link there. It's a 5-day, 45-hour course providing foundational lactation education and certification to Native people so they can provide support to their communities. Native designed, Native taught. It is for Indigenous individuals, and you do not have to be a breastfeeding mom or a formerly breastfeeding mom. You can be like myself. I haven't had a child yet, but I wanted to learn about it because this is something that I hope to be able to do in the future. but that I also felt as a female and an Indigenous female, I should be able to have this knowledge to help others. And I've also attended class with males. There were male participants that were interested in learning more, either to help their spouse or to also give that knowledge to others within their tribe. The Native educators and breastfeeding specialists that I learned with were Cami Goldhammer and Kimberly Morsalis. So they're both amazing teachers. We spent a week just sitting with them and gathering all this different information, asking them all these different questions. And then in addition to that, we ended up like having Indigenous meals so that we could feed our bodies the way, like closer to the way that we used to eat. So they were very conscious of that and wanted to make sure that our entire experience was very Indigenous focused. They included a lot of modern day medicine and what works and what doesn't, a lot of myths, and then gave us Indigenous knowledge on top of that. So I really appreciated that. It was a really great program. They traveled to all different tribal communities all over the US and I think in Canada as well. Um, so if you want them to come through, you just talk to, I would say you talk to the Department of Health here and request that. And so they would be able to come over and get a cohort of people who are interested and train you all at the same time. And then they keep in touch with you too. So they're not just going to teach you and then bounce. They're going to keep in touch. They're going to answer whatever questions you have, and then you can follow them on their pages and see what they're doing and gather more information as it comes along because there's constantly changing medical information too. I did include their FB page here, so give that a look if you can. And then another thing I wanted to include in here that was pretty important was in our own ERA, we have language that pertains to breastfeeding. So on page 34 of the ERA, Chapter 3, Employment Policies, 18 other workplace policies, L breastfeeding, it states, the Ho-Chunk Nation provides a supportive environment to enable employees to breastfeed or express their milk during work hours. So this is a way to protect your right as a breastfeeding mother to be able to breastfeed or express your milk while you are working. An additional awesome part of this is that the Ho-Chunk Nation does have some pods and rooms that are available for breastfeeding. So talk to your Department of Health to gather more information of where those are located. And if you still need more privacy or you need some more support, there are so many people within the Department of Health that will be able to help you with that. They're really, really great. So there are a few other topics that I wanted to touch on that I felt were really important. Breastfeeding practices in America was one of the first topics. So breastfeeding is medicine and it is the first food. So when your baby is born, that should be the first thing that they are ingesting is your milk. Milk is medicine. So this way they are getting all of those good nutrients and antibodies, and they're getting a really great fighting chance the second that they're out. Young women are taught from a young age that breastfeeding is very important. And the community generally, traditionally, has been extremely supportive, especially the women. The women always made sure that all the younger generations understood how important breastfeeding was and what traditional things that they needed to do to be able to rear that child, in addition to offering their own time and abilities to help with that. So I did have a question here. What have you been taught by family, friends, doctors, media, or otherwise? And if you can add that into the comments, that would be great. And then we can review later. But I am very curious about what you've been taught because there are a lot of different things, a lot of different beliefs about breastfeeding. So in the United States of America, um, individual states create their own laws around breastfeeding in public. The cool thing about Wisconsin is that it allows public breastfeeding. So there is more information. I did include a link there at www.wisconsinbreastfeeding.com, advocacy laws. This just kind of covers a bunch of information about like what breastfeeding laws are available here in the state. There are two federal laws that do protect pumping at work. So there's break time for nursing mothers, which was passed in 2010, and it is part of the Affordable Care Act. And then there's PUMP, which stands for Provide Urgent Maternal Protections Act. And this took effect in 2023 and expands the type of workers that are covered. So uh, basically what is required is there has to be a functional private space for the mother to be able to breastfeed and be allowed a reasonable amount of time to do that. Um, but again, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of mothers that are not quite comfortable with public breastfeeding, even breastfeeding within their own home. If there are individuals that they're not comfortable with exposing their breasts to. Um, and that in part, I would have to say, is kind of like just the way society has kind of raised us to feel that way. There's a lot of like shame towards that part of the body. Um, and then just to be frank, like there's also, you know, kind of the male gaze and like inappropriateness on that sense. Um, it wasn't really like that until colonization. And this was something that was just understood as, you know, this is feeding the baby, just like you feed yourself when you're eating lunch anywhere. So do not feel pressured to breastfeed in public. You do not need to feel pressured, but I also want you to feel that, you know, this is something natural. This is something that you're meant to do, and you don't have to feel as uncomfortable as you do because this should just be a part of life. And again, you have your own reasons for how you feel about it. I know with me, I'd want, you know, privacy and like, you know, I'd like to be in an area where I can do this like without having like eyes on me, and that's fine. That's why we have these laws in place. That's why we have these things put into place for us to have that privacy. Um, but also to feel that you're a woman. Like this is natural. You're doing this and you should be able to do it and you have that right. So another topic I wanted to go over was sacred practices and medicines throughout the birthing process. And now birthing is a ceremony. When you're giving birth, you have to treat it like it's a ceremony because that's how it was with us traditionally. But it also is this really beautiful thing that you're doing. You're giving life. You are bringing life onto this earth. And so when you're giving birth, you want to offer traditional medicines during and after. Sweetgrass and cedar are good to burn. Putting tobacco down around your birthing site and making sure that you're giving it as an offering, all great things. Um, Clean water so that you stay hydrated, but that you're washing with the clean water as well. Um, I know that the Ojibwe uses sturgeon broth for after delivery and white fish broth to bathe the baby. There's also other cultures, other indigenous tribes that do the snow bathing as well. There's also, I think, Norwegian people do this as well as a snow bathing after birth. And then birthing on the tribal lands. So when I was doing my trainings, We actually had one participant who was well on her way to giving birth. And unfortunately, we couldn't make it as doulas to get there in time for her birth. She ended up giving birth really quickly, um, within like 3 hours of going into labor. And she was far enough where the doulas, myself included, we were just out of time and reach. So she gave birth in a homemade I'm just going to use hut because they have a different word for it, but basically all spread out with a bed and clean water and all the medicines and blankets, a fire, everything to keep everybody warm. And she gave birth on her lands. When that baby was born, they had pictures taken. The baby's feet were placed on the ground and immediately after birth. And that's another tradition too. So, this is to basically state this baby was born on tribal lands. This baby is a tribal member. Um, it was beautiful, beautiful to see the photos and to hear the stories and to see just how much support that she had in all of this from her community and her family. So she really treated it like a ceremony herself. Her family did as well. And the doula that she did have supporting her, I think she also had a midwife, was there before, during, and after the process to get her through all of that. Family presence, really, really important. Like I was saying, it helps out a lot. You want to get as many of the family members that you trust and love around you. And then family presence again, I can just go back to that slide, but family presence again is just really important for your mental health while you're giving birth and after. Um, Emotional support, being able to physically support you as well. So when you give birth, your focus mainly is on breastfeeding. Your focus is on that baby and keeping that baby warm and fed and clean, and nurtured. So when you're doing that, family presence is super important to help you with even daily household things like vacuuming, mopping, cleaning your dishes, making some meals. That helps out tremendously. And I know that from others who have recently had children, and they've said like, if I didn't have that, I don't know what I would have done. I felt like I may have starved or something, because there just wasn't enough time, and they were, new parents, and they had a lot to focus on with that new baby. So find those members that you really trust and care about and have them around you during that time. Um, with natural delivery, your natural birth plan may get disrupted. So, make sure that you have plans in place to cover every little thing. My friend that had given birth on her tribal lands, she had a backup plan. And if she needed to go to the hospital, she had all of that scheduled and set. Um, and her midwife and doula, were there to support as well. So just make sure you always have everything covered. Even if you think it might not happen, it may happen. And then secure the placenta and the cord. So burying the placenta is actually something that you should do because it returns it to the earth and it gives thanks to the creator for the life that was made. And then take care of the cord so that when it falls off, you place it into a leather pouch and bury it close to home. Create a calming atmosphere. So you want dim lights. You don't want a lot of sound. Find some music or maybe some nature sounds that really help with calming you down. Native songs help as well. You don't want to be blasting music unless you really want to. then you can. I'm not going to tell you you can't, but you want to create an atmosphere where your stress levels are as low as possible. And aftercare support. So having family visit, friends visit, that helps. Sharing the responsibilities, like I had said earlier, having others assist you with basic needs such as cleaning and cooking, running a grocery run. You have to get some bills paid or whatnot, like have them assist you as much as possible. Whatever you can do to be able to take those moments to sleep a little bit more, to take a shower, to eat some food yourself, because if you're not taken care of well, the baby is not taken care of well, and then it affects the breast milk that you're able to make as well. So it affects the baby in a lot of different ways. You as the mother have to stay as strong as possible. So there's times when mothers they're not very hungry. They're either really stressed out or their body is just still trying to recover. And, that's when family and friends come in and encourage some more eating. Like, take a couple extra bites here, drink a little bit more water. And then, helping with the baby a little bit so that mom can get that extra sleep and take care of herself too. Um, and then with the breastfeeding too, just encourage it, because there's going to be times when mom is going to feel that it's too much, it's overwhelming. She wants to just go to bottle feeding because it seems easier. But encourage the breastfeeding, because that's the way that the baby is getting all of these nutrients and antibodies. They're getting the best things from mom's milk. And then I added talk with an elder. So no matter what tribe you're from, talk to one of your elders. Talk to them about breastfeeding and giving birth and the befores and afters of all of that, raising your kids. Um, they're going to have a lot of knowledge, not only traditional knowledge, but just their own personal knowledge of what they've experienced. And maybe there's something that, like, your grandmother went through that you're also going through. Or maybe this elder, over here has this really in-depth knowledge about a certain issue you're having with breastfeeding that it works for you, So just talk to an elder. Don't hesitate. They have so much knowledge, and they're such a great resource. So there are sacred practices and medicines of all sorts from different tribes. So I asked, what are sacred practices and medicines that you know of? And include those in the comments as well. If you don't want to include them in the comments, feel free to email them to your Department of Health, or if you are able to get my information as well, because I've given them permission to give you my email as well. You can email me directly and ask me, or give me, your experiences, your stories. So we're on to complications after childbirth. I felt this was really important to include because a lot of people do experience complications after. Um, and it scares mothers a lot. Especially first time moms when you're kind of going through new things. But Black American Indian and Alaska Native people are 2 to 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy related causes, with more than 60% of pregnancy related deaths thought to be preventable. And I included a list of complications over here, including cardiovascular diseases, sepsis or other serious infections, hemorrhaging, stroke, high blood pressure, and then issues with like pain medications used during surgery or delivery. So just take a quick look at these. And then I included some other common complications here as well. You can experience hair loss. I know that I have several friends that after they've had children, they've complained about hair loss and that their hair hasn't like seemed to be the same after giving birth. Breast pain and tenderness, sleep deprivation, that's pretty common. Stretch marks, that's a very, very common thing. And then discomfort during sex, along with these other ones that are listed here. More complications include postpartum depression, something that's not talked about a lot when you have a child. And again, it affects how you breastfeed because you have difficulty with connecting with the baby, connecting as a mother. So these things might kind of cause a rift between you and baby, but these are things that you need to talk to a professional about and make sure that you're addressing everything that's going on so that you can properly get the treatment that you need and be able to move forward positively. It doesn't last forever. It's going to get better, and you just have to, you know, make the right moves to be able to get to that point. And it can be difficult, but it will get better. There's also PTSD, paranoia, obsessive thoughts, feelings of guilt, poor concentration, and anxiety. You can also feel very tired. Okay, so this is lack of sleep. You just had a baby. There's a lot of time being spent on feeding the baby. Baby's waking up crying, needs to be changed. You're worried about the baby, don't know if they're sleeping well. So that's just everything is tied in together, especially as first-time parents. And that includes your breastfeeding concerns. Maybe you feel like baby isn't getting enough, they're crying a lot after you've just breastfed them. These are things that, again, you can talk to a lactation counselor or your doctor about, and they can assist you further. If you are having some serious symptoms, you need to seek medical attention immediately. And I've made a list here of what those are, but some of them are like a headache that isn't responding to medicine or that changes your vision. That's really scary. So make sure to talk to a doctor. Your blood pressure readings, if they're really out of whack, make sure to go see your doctor right away. Seizures, that's immediately something that would be extremely scary. So make sure that you don't take those lightly. Go see a doctor. Some preventative measures that you can do are creating a postpartum care plan so that during your pregnancy, you know what to do afterwards and who to talk to. Make sure to always, you know, keep track of your symptoms and talk to your doctor about whatever symptoms you're having. See your healthcare provider within 3 weeks of delivery and within 12 weeks of delivery for a complete checkup. A lot of women wait like 6 months. They wait a very long time to go see their doctor. If you're having any issues, see your doctor right away. But to stay on top of it, I would suggest this within 3 weeks of delivery and within 12 weeks for a complete checkup. If you have mental health concerns, you can contact your Department of Health. You can contact your breastfeeding counselor, and that individual should be able to lead you in the right direction. But then there's also this National Maternal Mental Health Hotline. So they're free, confidential, number is right there, and they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then in addition to that, it goes back to family and friends. If you're having some issues, there's things that you need to talk about. reach out to them. If there's things that you need done because it's affecting your mental health and you can't take the time to focus on yourself, reach out to them, ask them for some help. Don't be afraid to do that. What are your experiences? So this is another question that feel free to please put into the comments here, or feel free to email them. Everybody has different experiences. So if you don't feel comfortable with sharing it in the comments here, emailing is perfectly fine. And then if you have any questions along with that, we can answer them. And that's it. So I will give this back to Renelle, and I will, I guess, just leave it on this page unless you want me to stop sharing.
That's perfect.
Okay,
Love it.
perfect.
It was a great presentation. Thanks, Kimberly. So I actually had a question. You mentioned that it's traditional to bury the placenta after birth. Is that a Ho-Chunk specific tradition, or do other Indigenous communities also have that practice?
So that's something that I have to ask one of our Ho-Chunk elders, but this is what I learned during my training. And this was definitely an Anishinaabe way of doing things. And I thought it was so interesting. I was like, I had never been taught that myself. I'm mixed though, so there's different things that, I've been taught. But I kind of was like, the placenta and the cord and how important they are to keep in that space, that birthing space, on your lands. Um, Basically, like I had said, it's giving thanks to the creator for the life that was created. Um, but it's also like keeping what's a part of us because we're from this land, right? Like we have our beliefs about like where we come from. Um, it's tying us to the land, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to share with Kimberly?
I'm looking in the chat myself as well. And yes, anybody that wants a copy of the PowerPoint, just let us know. Department of Health has a copy of this. And I saw this comment too, milk sharing. If you have it, help out. That is so important. The milk sharing is very, very important. If a mother is not able to produce enough milk, again, there are ways for the mother to um, be able to make that production higher. But if they need assistance at that time, another mother who is making enough milk, making maybe like a lot of milk, they can share. And that way your baby is still being fed that breast milk. Taylor, I saw your comment here. Thank you so much. All right, and somebody would love the PowerPoint down here as well. Yeah, so again, like if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to the Department of Health and get my information, or if it's all right, can I put my email in here?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me do that. And I know I've heard that there are individuals that are really interested in becoming lactation counselors. I highly suggest doing it. Even if you don't go any further with it in your career as a lactation counselor, it's just really great knowledge to have. And it kind of kicks off like a need to learn more about it. So then, again, you'd be able to like go to elders or mothers within your tribe or other tribes and ask them specific things. Um, and gather that knowledge. And then maybe someday, if you do become a parent yourself, or if you already are a parent, you can apply that. And kind of reflect too on what you did as a first time parent, second time parent. Because we all, this is how you learn, is just by doing it, right? And sometimes we need help with certain things, but sometimes we just figure it out and it works. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Irina.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'll stop recording.